Hello and welcome to another edition of Fide's podcast. My name is Jerry Serino and I'm your host, and I'm here with talent on loan from Rush. One of the things that I have loved about my show, as simple as it is that I have had the opportunity and honor and pleasure of meeting so many people that outside of this show that I do out of my house, I would never have the opportunity to meet people. And there are so many extremely interesting people, extremely accomplished people with great perspectives. And I have the privilege and honor of having former boxer Ed Latimore, who is doing some really great stuff and has really great perspectives. And I want to talk to him just about a bunch of stuff. So, Ed, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey man, thanks for having me on. You know, FIDE, like the chess organization. I was pronouncing it FIDES in my head.
Yeah, I know that's the one. That's the one thing is people struggle with. Fides is Latin for knowledge, faith, truth. That's where it comes from. But sort of like people, the saying, the motto for the Marines, "Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis." So anyway, listen, I came across you on social media, and you're doing a lot of stuff on there. That's how I came across what you were doing and a lot of things you were posting and saying, and I do that a lot. I find really great people. Tell me, give everyone a little bit about your background. As I said, you're a former boxer. Tell us about that. Tell us how you got into boxing, what your upbringing was like, and what you've been doing.
Yeah, man. So where's the best place to start with this story? I've learned that it's not if I don't tell it a certain way, people go, "Oh, it all happened,
Yeah.
linearly," and it's like, some parts. But I grew up in a typical public housing project in the 80s and 90s. And for people who don't know, that was it was a rough time. I mean, they're still rough. I mean, but that's just when crack was hitting and everybody was losing their minds over that. And I grew up in that environment and around those kinds of people and the type of things that tends to go on. With that, I see you got the My Pillow promo at the bottom, which is hilarious. As I'm talking about crack, but but I figured out how to survive and make it through that environment really without getting into serious trouble. Certainly without getting into any legal trouble, which is excellent. And but as far as the boxing goes, I didn't start fighting competitively until I was 22, and that's a really late age. But I needed to put some sweat equity in on this planet. I really hadn't done anything with my life. I've always enjoyed feeling unique and not feeling like I'm doing what everyone else is doing or just being a regular guy. And I had maybe delusions of grandeur of that in my head, but the reality didn't reflect that. So I needed to go do something to make myself not become your typical 20 something that just drank a lot and party. I drank a lot and party, but I
hmm
wanted there to be more to my story than that. So
So
that's
where did you grow up? What city?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
In Pittsburgh, and you're still
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh, correct?
Still in Pittsburgh. Been to a lot more places now, lived in a few places, but this is home base for now.
Okay, so I'm here from Cleveland, which is
Oh,
just
right at the
just a
road.
yeah, just really it is right up the road. Been to Pittsburgh many times. So you'd say where you grew up, you obviously those are challenging areas. How many people, doesn't matter who, when you're in that environment, your life trajectory is typically not good, right?
Right.
Just simply living in an environment like that. How did you escape that? Because and it wasn't just sports. I mean, you're doing great
Well,
stuff now, right? I
what
mean,
wasn't any sports at all, man. Like it really is a shame that many people now I haven't been in that environment for a very long time. Now I've been an adult longer than I've been a child, which happens when you turn 36, and every moment after that, you're an adult longer than you were a minor.
yeah.
So there's a lot for that culture. I know the constants and I know the pressure still exists, but I don't know if the messaging is still the same, especially with the rise of the internet, which I think is an amazing thing. But generally, when we were coming up, the idea was that your way out was sports or some type of performance, and you weren't really expected to be. School was this thing that people didn't take seriously,
Mhm.
and it probably is, is still that way because kids are kids, and once again, there's a lot of constants with this. For me though, I I didn't know. I played sports, but I didn't play sports until I was in high school. My mom had a policy, which in retrospect is kind of dumb, but there was part of my life that I thought it was a good idea. She didn't want me to be just another dumb kid that played sports from the hood, right? Just another black kid that could run or shoot a basketball. So she actively kept me out of sports, and there was no part of me that really was drawn to them.
Mhm.
So she didn't have to fight with me too much on that. In fact, I got into sports. The first sport I played was in middle school in the eighth grade. I tried cross country because I wanted to just get in shape and push myself. And then when I got to high school, my high school was weird. Or not weird. I guess they don't do this kind of thing anymore. We used to do these like physical tests that was like part of the grade, and they would like put your numbers up and show where you ranked them with grade. And we did
Mhm.
everything from 40-yard dash to the bench press, uh, swimming, stuff like that. And it was all ranked. And I did pretty well on a lot of these tests in the ninth grade, and without any training at all. People were like, "Oh, you should play football." So I decided to do that, and it worked out pretty good, and it was a fun time. Uh, but I didn't. But sports wasn't my way out. My way out was not getting into trouble, and I really didn't know about the concept of negativa at all before. That's really a new concept I've learned in the past few years. But what I did was I made sure I just didn't make any big mistakes. Right?
Mhm.
Everyone wants is they're looking for some home run or some brilliant move, but you can go pretty far if you just don't mess up. And I didn't have I didn't get arrested or get anyone pregnant. Uh, Joining the gangs or things like that. Make I kept to myself. I played video games, and one of the smartest things I did this, which in retrospect, the more I tell this story, the more incredible it sounds. I did this when I would have been 13, 12 or 13. I told my mom where I wanted to go to high school. I said, I don't want to go to high school in our feeder system because where it works is that the neighborhood you live is where they're going to send you.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to do this. I want to go to this school across town. And it was an hour bus ride both ways. I spent 4 years of my life traveling 2 hours a day, which is a disadvantage in a lot of ways. But it put me in a completely different environment that completely changed my life. And I think sometimes just not doing something, not being someplace makes all the difference in the world, and it really did for me. And there are other little things that allow me to have that perspective and make those moves
Mhm.
that add up to it. I never really cared about. I got really comfortable younger with not. I could recognize the elements that I didn't want to be part of.
Yeah.
It's not like I wasn't susceptible to peer pressure as any child is, but there was a certain, I just saw I wasn't interested in a lot of the stuff I saw around me. Um, I was a bit of a nerd, man. I like video games, and that was really important to me. A lot of the people didn't. Not playing sports, interestingly enough, probably kept me from interacting even more with the people in my neighborhood, and
So I
probably.
I have to ask, since, video games today are so, you're playing online, you're playing with people in other countries or other parts of this country, and there's so many games. When I grew up, we really had Mario Brothers. What were you playing when you say you were
Oh,
a
I
nerd?
loved I loved RPGs, man. Role playing fantasy games, the Final Fantasy, Fantasy Star,
Okay.
Xenogears, Legend of Zelda, stuff that were like it was like text based. It actually got me interested in writing initially. That's what me, I write a lot of nonfiction. That's like my blog, but my real dream is to write a fiction. To write fiction,
Hmm.
that's the real secret dream, and I hope I'll achieve that one day. Well, not hope I will. It's just a matter of how and when it makes
Hmm.
sense to go for it. But was my sanctuary, man. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even like my home life that much either. It was stuff at home. Yeah, I'm dealing with stuff in my
Yeah.
neighborhood. But the video games, I could just disappear into that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
well, I guess that there's a silver lining to everything. I mean, there's, we have to keep our kids limited amounts of time on video games, but I suppose there's a case for saying, hey, the alternative is worse. So what I love about your story, and I think that there's millions and millions more, is that the talent and ability that you had or have was always there, right? It was always in you in a sense. I'm not saying you didn't have to develop it or like for sure, but even in an environment that wasn't necessarily conducive to you becoming a doctor, right? I mean, look,
right.
I couldn't become a doctor just because I'm not smart enough. Um, but in the environment that you're describing where you grew up is certainly harder to do, but the talent is there, right? And it's not just the talent for sports, it's the talent up here that you had. And so you've taken those experiences, and you do write about you had addiction, is that correct?
Yeah. I ended up really in bad in with alcohol. Now, fortunately for me, because of my experiences growing up and the things I've seen, the people I live next to or I even interact with in my home,
Hmm.
hard drugs terrify me. Like I absolutely to this day they terrify me. Like one of the things I always say is I'll never try cocaine because or cocaine, crack, it's all the same thing to me. And it is the same thing, but I said I'll never try that because I don't want to love something so much. I don't want to risk loving something so much. I'd be willing to put a penis in my mouth to get some more of it. Like that's the kind of when not everyone turns into a crackhead. Like no
Yeah.
one, or like I like to say, no one smokes crack planning to become a crackhead. Like that's
Right.
not the plan. No one
Right.
tries coke recreationally, planning to turn into a fiend, and not everyone does. But you might, and if you roll those dice, once you open Pandora's box, you don't know what the hell is going to come out. Better leave that one closed. And I learned that one firsthand, watching people grow up, seeing people in my family and just neighbors around me get destroyed by that. But the booze was different
Hmm.
because it was legal because
Yeah.
they really messed up. I think with the policy on this one, they made that one legal, and they
Hmm.
and that's the one because it's legal. They have a really strong commercial engine behind it, and that commercial engine then permeates the culture. Think about like what's the rite of passage for someone turning 21 to get, I mean, to basically poison themselves. Let's call it
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. To an extreme degree. And that's just like for 21. We're not talking about like the other nights of the week in college. It's crazy. Uh, and I fell into it easily because I think you have to have a certain set of personality traits to make addiction possible, or rather I think it's possible to get addicted to anything
Hmm.
regardless of the physiological alterations, like the way heroin alters your receptors so you get addicted. But they go, how can someone get addicted to weed? That's impossible. Like, nah, you only think that because you don't understand addiction and you haven't seen some of the shit I've seen.
Yeah.
But what makes everything else, I think, outside of the physiological alterations to be psychologically addictive, you need a certain set of psychological deficiencies, and I think I had every single one, and so it was really just a matter of time, and it really did a number on me.
What was it? What when you say you had these I guess, traits that made you susceptible to addiction. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
What were those traits? Like, what was that?
So for starters, man, I was lonely and isolated, and that's in a deep kind of lonely and isolation where you just you need the approval of people, or you don't feel like you're worth much. You don't feel like you belong.
Hmm.
Because just the way I grew up in the one environment where I was never accepted, and then I was in another environment. When I went to that different high school where I got new friends, but I still felt out of place, and that always to this day. Now I'm a lot better with code, a lot better actually. In fact, I understand how to translate this into becoming a leader and a teacher. Uh, but I'd always had that issue of feeling like an outcast, and drinking comes with a built-in culture. You see this a lot with all drugs.
Hmm.
There's this culture. In fact, this is on a side note. I got a lot of articles about this on my site. So why porn addiction, we almost got to consider it something different because there's not a culture in the sense of let's get together and watch porn. Like at least not normally. Uh, but let's get together, drink, smoke, do blow, stuff like that, right? So that's one. With that comes this social anxiety, and I wouldn't call it anxiety because I mean I'm not really anxiety. We'll call it like awkwardness. Uh,
Okay.
and for some people, oh, what I think a lot of people who experience this have to realize, and I had to realize it, it's not social awkwardness because I'm not awkward. I'm a smooth motherfucker, man. Like I have no problem talking to people and having a conversation. What it is it's exacerbated by that feeling of being not being able to be alone and not being able to feel left out and go do your own thing. So you
Hmm.
figure out how to fit in with a group, and the best way to do that is not only do what they're doing and drink, but in that drinking, you dumb yourself down. You really get to move on their level. Instead of going to find people who are on your level or elevate or doing your own thing because you're not comfortable with that, you got to dumb down. So there's that social awkwardness. I never had the courage to just go out and do my own thing. I never felt, oh, I had the big FOMO like I'm missing out. You want to belong. You feel like that's how you're going to meet girls or something like that. That helps. And then there's the trauma. Uh, that the way I grew up, and I didn't realize this because I'm such a hard ass. The way I think about things, I always tell people, what happened to you as a kid. That's got it's you got to deal with that, but you can't use that as an excuse for what happened to you for how you behave as an adult, and
Hmm.
and that is 100% true. But what I leave out and what I neglect to say in that is that you got to deal with it.
Hmm.
You can't make excuses. You got to deal with it. And I never dealt with a lot of the issues I had. I never dealt with a lot of things I saw. So that affected how I dealt with my emotions when I became an adult. And booze is so easy. And in Pennsylvania, particularly, some I didn't realize. Chris Rock's got this joke where he talks. I think it's Chris Rock and Chappelle. I hate mixing them up because I feel like a bad black person when I do that. But I just heard the joke at one point and it stuck with me, which is that you got to be prepared when they take you to the hood. I looked up and I saw the telltale signs of the hood: liquor store, gun store, gun store, liquor store, liquor store, gun store. Well, I didn't get that joke when I heard it because I live in Pennsylvania, one of the two states where the state controls liquor. When I moved to
Right.
California, I was like, oh, I can just go on the Target and get a bottle. I didn't know that. That was a new thing to me.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's really easy, even with the way the state store works, which we call it here in Pennsylvania. You just go get a bottle, and that's how you fit in. It's easy to distract yourself. It's fun. You don't have to focus on anything.
Hmm.
You numb yourself. You gotta. I say you're putting on emotional sunglasses, all that kind of stuff. So I had all of that, and the booze just combine that with being a little competitive naturally. You want to be the guy that drinks. You want to be the life of the
Hmm.
party. It all comes together, and then one day you realize, oh shit, you don't know how to have fun without alcohol.
Yeah.
That's a big shift, man.
So when you talk about the things that addiction sort of takes the place of, or I don't, again, I don't, maybe I'm not explaining it right. The traits that you have that create addiction, or the experiences, may like you said, something from childhood, or anxiety or insecurity or wanting to belong. If we What's the alternative for people, right? For people who found comfort, in a sense, or it's a false comfort and it's temporary comfort, in drugs or alcohol, or you mentioned pornography. What's the alternative for people?
So now this is where we can talk about porn. So you brought it up kind of in there where this the treatment from in an abstract sense is identical, and you figure out kind of what you're dealing with, and everyone's dealing with the same thing, right? Everyone thinks their addiction story is different till you spend enough time around addicts, and you're like, oh shit, I'm just like y'all, right? And like when I went to AA the first time, I actually didn't go back for a while because I was like, yeah, I got a problem, but I'm not like y'all. I went
Yeah.
back 4 years later, and I was like, holy shit, man, I am just like y'all. The only difference is I got lucky and didn't have to get the law involved to get me in, because
Hmm.
there were a lot of people telling stories about how like they were on court order, AA meetings. Otherwise,
Hmm.
they lose custody of their kid or something. I was like, wow. I said, I ain't like y'all. And I said, no, I'm just like you. The difference is I stopped before the law of large numbers caught up to me. But the uh the thing it's taking the place of, you got to figure out how to get it somewhere else. But you got to know what it's taking the place of.
Hmm.
There's I kind of white knuckled it, so to speak, when I got sober, but but not really either, because I didn't know what it was taking the place of, but I inadvertently filled it, because my sobriety story is, my last or my first day of sobriety was December 23rd, 2013. And one of the reasons, the big reason what led me to it, is I looked at everything I had on the table and I said it's not worth it anymore. I said I don't want to take the risk because I feel like my life is going in a good direction. More
Hmm.
specifically, I had just finished the basic training for the military and I was enlisted now. I had just re-enrolled in school and I was going to really succeed and make a go at this. My professional career was really kicking off, and I had just started a really good relationship with now the mother of my child, right? So this is 10 years ago. And I said, if any of this goes wrong, I want it to go wrong because I messed it up. I don't want, because I kept looking at what booze was doing,
Hmm.
and I said, all right, all my problems come back to that. I didn't know what I was really doing was taking the place of what I thought I was going to get from booze. Booze, I always tell people being liked and being respected feel the same to people who are not used to either. And I'm that person. A year in, and people see what I'm doing with, oh, this guy's in school and his professional career and is a solid relationship, and people are seeing and taking advice from me and following my writing. I slowly have built myself into this person of respect, and respect is just a hell of a lot better than being liked, and that's what I was. I'm still getting the approval, right?
Hmm.
That never goes away, but it's how I got it, and that's why I talk about why we can talk about porn in the same respect. A lot of guys get on porn now. If they get on it early, there is a real psychological or physiological change that has to be worked out. But a lot of guys stay on it because they got rejected and they don't know how to deal with it. Or talking to a girl is scary; they don't know how to deal
Hmm.
with that. So this is a good way to get female. Um, I guess the substitute, much like being liked, the
Yeah.
substitute for female attention and affection or whatever. But it's a lot harder to build yourself into an attractive guy and be patient.
Hmm.
But goodness, the payoff is a lot better.
Yeah.
Like you would never go back. I mean, I don't know how you would go back.
So, what role, if any, and it does faith have in all the things you talk about in dealing with addiction, um, confronting challenges, changing your life? What does faith have in it?
So here, this is a really interesting question because I think a few years ago, I have no idea actually what I would have said, here's how I look at it now. I look at it on two fronts. In the purest sense of the word, faith is a not knowing what is there, but moving and hoping, I guess, or whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the reasons people don't do stuff, I think, is because they don't have faith. They need to be 100% sure, and unfortunately, life doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
There's always, it's a probability function. Your success or your failures, and what all you can do is put the odds in your favor. That's it. And I didn't know, if you'd asked me how things would live, if it would look the way it looks now 10 years ago, I'd have no idea. All I know is I'm trying for it to not look like how it is now, right? I'm just trying to get rid of that. All right. So I'm moving in faith. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through school. If I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle what I go for, because I write about my math difficulties in high school and how I had no faith in my ability to learn this stuff. So to go
Hmm.
and get a physics and math degree, that's kind of nuts. But that's what I do. And so I'm hoping, I am hoping at one point that I'm like, okay, now I know. Just give me enough time, I can learn anything. That's how I feel now, right? But
Hmm.
that's faith. And after a while, you walk in faith on this earth. You eventually start to go, okay, my faith is stronger than my uncertainty, and that's how you move towards real change and outcome. On the other end of it, the way, maybe this is what you meant, maybe you didn't, in terms of a higher power. First off, I'm a 100% believer in a higher power. I always feel a little uncomfortable saying God, because I feel like that turns him into, he or she, right? This is the problem. Turns to a kind of an entity that one day I'll be able to gaze upon or interact with, and I just don't think it works that way. But in terms of, for all intents and purposes, I harbor a Christian, Catholic, whatever belief, right? My particular interpretation of that as it relates to my life, I have to believe, I can't operate any other way when I look at where I was and where I am now, and the time I was born, the country, and the personality and the brain I have and the opportunities I got. The coins that didn't land on heads but landed on tails for me. I have to believe I'm here for something, some purpose. I Otherwise, what was the point? I
Hmm.
mean, I think about all the things that I have in front of me that I've been able to grasp, the second chances, the that I've got. I still have nightmares thinking about all the times when I was under the influence. I decided to drive, and I go, one, all it took was one time,
Hmm.
and that one time did happen. And you know what the cops said? Obviously, no, don't recommend it. And they go, hey, you're probably over the limit. We're gonna let you get home. You're a little over the limit. Get out of here. So it's like I failed the sobriety test. All it takes is one, and
Right.
that changes. That eliminates a whole set of experiences in my life that I've had.
Yeah.
And so I just think about all the times that I've been lucky. But I can't look at it as, I mean, it is luck if I look at it
Yeah.
with this analytical mind. But if the part of me that works the way I think the world works, nah, man. So I try to never. Now that I'm aware of it and I move with that power in the back of my mind, I don't disrespect it. I'm.
So yeah, no, great. So, last question before we get into what you're doing now with your writing. You said you were, you want to write fiction, but you're writing some great stuff now, and where people can connect with you and follow you. If you're watching, you see actually underneath Ed's picture is his website. So edlatimore.com. You can go to. You could also connect with him on all the various social media and follow him and what he's saying and posting and read his articles. But before I hand it over to you to talk about all your writing, I want to ask you who are the people that you admire, that you look up to?
uh, you know, I did. It's just one of the rough things about growing up the way I grew up. I didn't realize this until someone, this question gets asked a few times. I didn't have somebody I looked up to until I was 28. I didn't know anybody, and then I
Hmm.
and then I met my coach, my boxing coach, Tommy and Kello, and that was the first person I met where I was like, this is a person I want to emulate. It's a person I respect for what they've accomplished, how they live their life, how they go about their craft and everything like that.
Hmm.
That's somebody I look up to and I really admire, man. I just want to be. I want people to talk about me the way they talk about him,
Hmm.
for better or worse. The things that they don't like, that's cool because they're they're the result of a principled approach to life. So that's what comes to mind
Yeah.
immediately. Is that guy and changed my life? He's one of the reasons I got sober.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. We all could. All it takes is one person, right? Like you were just saying about the potential DUI. It takes one thing, one situation to turn things bad. So I always think about, when we as individuals are engaging with people, whether you're a coach of your kid's team, how you behave could have a positive or a negative impact on other people. And that's great to hear. What was his name again? I'm sure people will want to look him up.
Tommy and Kello. He's got a big YouTube channel on IG now, and
Nice.
no,
Okay.
no. but he took me in shit, man,
Awesome.
11 years ago and trained me and really on top of that, a fantastic teacher. I mean, the way I
Yeah.
model a lot of the way I teach is how he taught me and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's finish up here with again how people can connect to you and what can they expect when as far as your writings and what to learn and gain from them.
Awesome, man. So I don't know, I'll just answer this in a way it kind of makes sense order wise and see how it works. Uh, in terms of what's coming next, big stuff. I'm in the process of working out a book deal with Penguin, and that's awesome because I've always wanted to. Because my first few books that were self published is I'm building the audience, building the game, but now I got a
Hmm.
good platform, and now they're going to help me move it to the next level. I really believe that
Hmm.
having that under my belt. So I'm working on that book. Probably won't be out for a few years because that's how these things go, but get
Hmm.
it out as soon as possible. But in the meantime, I'll still be producing content for my website down at the bottom at latimore.com. And if you come to that, I write about whatever I want, right?
Good.
I don't stay in neat bounds for what I think my brand is.
Hmm.
But I'm smart enough to know that there's the SEO aspect of my writing, so there are certain topics I do hone in on. But for everything else, you sign up to the newsletter, or you'll be able to follow me on Medium or Substack. I'm there as well, and I'm growing those channels out because the message is really important, and I just think it's a good idea to reach as many people as possible. The content's already out there, or it's not already out there, but so many ideas that can just be shared and interacted with so many people. That's good.
Yeah.
I've also realized that there are a whole lot of people who can access me who would benefit from my message who maybe don't read. So I'm going to start producing, I mean, I've got a boatload of interviews. I mean, this is probably, we counted this out when I was working on my book proposal. This is easily over over 200, probably over 300 interviews I've done at this point. And there's a lot of clips and things like that are snipped up across the web. So I'll go grab those and put them out and start growing on TikTok and my TikTok, YouTube, and what's that other platform? Oh, Instagram Reels.
Yeah.
So really got some big things planned over the next year in terms of expansion of my message and who I am and everyone who wants to learn from me.
Good. Well, if you enjoyed listening to Ed on my show here and all that he has to say and his story and his thoughts and perspectives on things, go to edlatimore.com and again search Ed Latimore on all the different social media platforms because that's how I connected with him and have followed him. And If you've enjoyed this conversation we've had, you're going to enjoy connecting and reading him as well. So, Ed, thanks so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Hey man, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the show for sure.
Yeah, anytime. My pleasure. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Fides Podcast. Please check out all my different podcasts and all the different podcast apps on YouTube, on Rumble, and on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on rightamericamedia.com. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.